Hi, my name is David. I'm a Boomi integration specialist and software developer. Um, Today we are going to be talking about three simple ways to make your Boomi process very readable and feel more professional. A couple of times I've written code or design processes that I came back to like a few months down the line, 6 months, 3 months, and I struggle sometimes to really understood to understand what I've written. At least at the first glance, it took me a while. I have to run it and look for the documentation here and there, and all of that. Now, aside that, also I've opened processes I didn't design, and I feel like it just feels like a bowl of spaghetti. You know, it's not readable. It's not. It feels, yeah, it doesn't just really feel great. So um, I have a policy, right? At least when I design processes, people or the developers should at a first glance understand 70% of what the process does by just looking at it. That's very critical, you know. So let's dive in. We're going to be, looking at things like process name, shape names, process property, dynamic process properties, nodes, and a couple of things. So let's start with this process. And mind you, this process was adapted from the Boomi training, one of the Boomi training processes. So I'm just going to use it to illustrate what I mean. All right, so um, it was adapted, not the way it was designed. All right, so yeah. Um, so just looking at this at the first glance, it seems like, a couple of branches or routes are trying to, minimize the use of, the stop shapes basically. So I'm just gonna take this away from here, right? And most likely take this away and take this away too. Copy this, the whole new, the old stops then. All right, so at least just looking at this already, it feels a bit cleaner, and then you can see the flow. So also, let's prevent this crisscrossing. So that means this guy needs its own stock to copy, paste, and then we just do this. All right, so this looks like this. So, all right, so all of them seems to have their own stops now, but I like the processes to be on a straight line, sort of. All right, so at least for now, it looks a bit better. So rule number one, your process should not look like a maze, right? It should not look like, we're having, things like this. Sorry, things like, yeah, it doesn't just make sense. And mind you, in production, I've seen stuff like this, trust me. So, yeah, so you want to do that. Also, when it comes to routes or branches, um, I like all these guys to be not just on a straight line, but also for them to be in ascending order. Route 1, Route 2, Route 3, default, branch 1, branch 2, branch 3, you know, default. So we are going to do that with this, and you will see how it makes it way much more readable. All right, we have that there. So you could see 1, 2, 3, and default. So at the first glance, it looks clean, it looks straight. You don't need to try to figure out where things belong to. And this prevents a lot of, introducing unwanted bugs, you know, and, Yeah, things like that. All right, so let's go on. Let's go to the critical things now. The naming convention, especially for the process shapes. Now I have a simple rule for naming process shape. A process shape should be named according to what it does. A verb, an action word. Is it sending an email? Is it retrieving an email? Is it connected to a database? Is it fetching data from an API? Is it so that needs to be visible in the name. So let's go to the mail first. Yeah, we know it's a mail, but what does it do? It looks like this uses the Boomi connection to send new contact message. All right, so this could be like you're sending them, welcome messages or vouchers, coupons, so we will call this send new contact email. I try to make this as generic as possible because this could be a coupon, a voucher. So, but it should be an action word plus object. So the object is email. The action word is send. So send new contact email. Cool. So you could see that it's really looking a bit better. Now we have a disk legacy here. So let's try to understand what the disk legacy does. So the disk is a legacy connector, meaning that there's a new one. So this is updated. But it uses the update contact connector. Okay. So this basically connects to this work directory. All right, cool. And then it's send. Now send is this connector has just two operations: the send and the get. The get is for fetching data from a disk. The send is for inserting data into a disk. But when you insert data, right, you should also know that in a disk you have file names, so the file names can be unique, can already exist. So what happens when it already exists? Do you want the disk connector to throw an error? Do you want it to append it to the already existing file, or do you want it to create a unique file? So this seems to be the process. This seems to basically create unique name. So yeah, so you don't want to overwrite it. This doesn't want to append or throw an error. So this basically will create a unique name for the file and just write it over. So we are going to call this create file with unique name. We'll call it create because it's save file, meaning that works for you, but it shows the action it's trying to do, which is, or you could call it upload file, anything that works for you, right? But I'll call it create file with unique name. All right, so it creates a file with unique name, then it send new contact email. It's already reading like a book. Now, set properties. These are very, very important. I have worked in processes or with processes where it took me 15 minutes to figure out where a dynamic process property is set. That's a wasted time. If you've dealt with huge processes you didn't write, I'm sure you would have seen something like this before. And it's very hard to find where a dynamic process property is set in some instances, because when you debug the process, it doesn't show you. So my number one rule that I follow when I design processes is when I set properties, when I use the set properties shape, I try not to use more than 5 properties in there. So let me tell you what I mean. So inside here now you have a property. I think there's a document property. Let's check it. File name. Okay, so let's first set the display name for the system. Set file name document property, right? Rule number, okay, so a short rule for me is if it's a document property, I just call it the P, right? But let's say you have more than this, you could have a dynamic process property. So let's add the dynamic process property called file size. So for me, for dynamic process property, I do dpp underscore file size. Great, right? And let's add another one called, so I do ddp file name. You can name it anything. For me, I prefer the camel case. I've seen, you could do it like this. You could even, separate it with underscores. It's your choice, but, putting a DDP there shows me that it's a dynamic document property, at a glance without having to figure out, it's because you will kind of retrieve them in different ways, especially if you are retrieving them from a script, in a data process. You would use different ways to so, but from the name, it's very obvious. I'm going to do this. But if I save this now, I would think I'm only setting the file name here, right? But that's not true. So if I need those variables, I need to start searching, especially if I have multiple set files, there. So I'll do this. Set file name DDP. So I'll go then. It has DDP file name. And I'm going to show you where this is very useful. DPP file or DPP file size. Right. All right. So at a glance, I can see that in this shape, I'm setting the file name, that dynamic property, the file name, and the file size. Sorry, let's call this file type so that it doesn't conflict. So let's call this file type. Right. Okay, cool. So you do that. So now let's assume that this process contains is quite huge, So all I just need to do if I'm looking for where that file name or file type is, just do Control F and I say DDP, and you can see it already highlighted. So you know that, okay, inside here is where that object is being set. Cool. So let's go to data process. Now, data process and maps are extremely, extremely important, especially the naming convention, because they can hide business logic. And if you do this very well, you can make the documentation of your process very, very easy. What do I mean? So for data shape and maps and some other shapes, they have a notes feature. So what I like to do with the notes feature is explain, especially for data processes, right, that contains scripts, custom scripts, let's say. So this could be JavaScript, and you can do some very complex things here, right? That brothers around the business logic. So what I like to do with this is try to add notes here, right? Although this is just combining documents, so let me remove this. It's just combining document, right? But let's call the name combine document. Actually, combine document. But I'm going to add a note, a fictitious note. That's it. So let's I'm going to call it something like just anything. Title get file for unique customer. Sorry. File names should be unique. File names should have a lowercase, and all the different business logics that you kind of implemented in that data process shape. You could hide it here or put it there so that when another developer comes, it's easier for them because they could just, go on that note and see what is being done in that shape. And if you have some business logic or some requirements from your client, you could kind of, that is being implemented there, you could kind of hide it there so that, or put it there so that it's readable. So for the map shape, I also have a rule for the map shape. Let's go to the map itself. For the map shape, the number one rule I use for the map shape is to look at what's the source, what's the destination, right? Is it the XML? Is it the JSON? So for this, it kinds of collects an XML, I think, and then uses the account ID to fetch the account name, right? And then so this maps the account ID, account name by ID, and then creates the full name. That. Okay, so I'm gonna call this something like this. So what's the source shape? So it's contact XML. So contact JSON. So you could paste this place, right? Or you could say XML to JSON. Either way works. Either works. And then what it does is get account name, ID, create names. And then from this, you could see that it takes a contact XML, it creates a contact JSON, then it gets the account name by ID, and then to make this better, I could also put some things in the description. I already wrote one before. So the map looks up the account name from account table. So what do I mean? If you this is account table, looks up the account name from the account table using the account ID. It also creates a modified account name for name and for number. Cool. So save and close. Okay. All right. So you could see that at a first good glance, right, without anything, right, you could see, this guy gets from FTP, if it's installed, it uses the XML and then uses the account, gets the account name by ID, then creates names, combines the document, okay, send the file, then you create a unique name, and then you send email. So it just gets does some mapping. So it's way much more cleaner. It's easier to very much understand what's going on with the process. I'm not going to touch the remaining ones because of time, but let's go to one of the critical ones too, the process name. So this is mail contact process. Well, that's not really usable from what we can see now, at least from the idea we get from the process now. So I'm going to call this. So for process names, I have a simple, what's the source system? What's the destination system? So the source system it's an FTP, right? And then what's the destination? Mail and disk, right? And then a description of what the process does. It sends basically new, sends contact email, not what, just new contact email, and updates or create contacts or write to disk. Yeah, save. So from this, you could see that it gets something from FTP, then it does abstraction with mail and disk. So send contact email and write to disk. All right, so simple, straightforward. This can save you a lot of time if it's done well, especially the nodes, the names, the DTP, and all that. Thank you very much. If you like this video, please like, share, support us, subscribe. Also, we're having a new video coming out soon about exception handling. It's a very important topic that many developers also overlook. Thank you very much. Good day.